Choices Global, a production of First Assembly of God, LNP, Durban Street, Workmanville. Today, we begin a series, Cognitive Wellness, a Path to Mental Balance. And we will delve deep into the complex world of mental health and cognitive psychotherapy. We will embark on a journey of understanding, compassion, and empowerment as we explore the intricacies of our minds and the transformative power of behavioral change. We will be joined by our special guest, Maurice McKenzie, behavioral and psychotherapy therapist, a Guyanese by birth, but now resides and works in the UK, an expert in the field. And he will share on our topic today. Maurice McKenzie currently serves as a behavioral and cognitive psychotherapist accredited with the British Association of Behavioral and Cognitive Psychotherapists, BABCP. He's a senior mental health practitioner. He holds a mental health nurse registration with the Nursing and Midwifery Council, NMC. He also has diplomas and degrees and postgraduate degrees in theology from the Assemblies of God Bible Institute. And so today we are happy to have Maurice McKenzie with us as he shares on this topic, cognitive wellness, a path to mental balance. Welcome, Maurice, to Choices Global today. So, Morris, again, thanks again for being part of this with this discussion with us today. And an added feature of our Choices Global is that we have a live audience in the background who will be interacting with us throughout this discussion. But as we start off our discussion, we are curious to hear your perspective on unlocking our minds. Can you speak to us about the power of our mind and your ability to assess someone by the environment in which they operate?
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, we're looking at the power of the mind, unlocking it,
Mm-hmm. Correct.
and assessing a person from the environment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's undoubtedly and it's unchallenged that our mind or the creation of our mind is one of the most fascinating creations of all time. The
Mm-hmm.
human body is fantastic creation, and the mind serves as a sort of supercomputer. So
Mm-hmm.
most things happen in the mind. Of course, there are some
Correct.
automatic processes or autonomic processes, but the
Mm-hmm.
mind is and the ability to think and to think to a greater degree, and also the ability to understand the very mind. So the mind can understand the mind to a lot of to a large degree. And the idea of unlocking the power of the mind isn't really new, but I'd like to share something from psychotherapy which gives an insight into it. It's called the cognitive model. And this is basically um, a model, a theory that proposes that there are certain steps or phases or stages or acts that a person will have in their mind or go through before coming to behavior. And so this proposes that we have situations that occur. And once we have those situations, the argument is that people will think according to the situation. And then those thoughts will influence their emotions or feelings. And those feelings will outcome in bodily sensations or physiological reactions. And then we have behavior, which is a result. And then from that behavior reinforces our thinking. Now, all of these that I just explained interact with each other. So it's not a one way traffic, it's either way. Unlocking the mind is understanding that the most important part is the thought. Our thoughts are most important in unlocking our minds because, again, the cognitive model and cognitive behavioral therapy, so CBT, they propose that it's not the situations that we get involved in that causes our dysfunction. It's basically how we perceive it and the thoughts that emanate for it. So, for example, if I have a situation and it seems to be the worst situation to me, more than likely, if I view it that way, I will think accordingly, I will feel accordingly, my body will react accordingly, I will behave accordingly. But if I think even the worst situation, if I can think about it in a positive way, then my feelings are going to be positive, my bodily sensations will follow, my behavior will follow, and then I will reinforce that. So the key to unlocking your mind is to understanding your thoughts. And those thoughts mainly there's an argument that we have over 90,000 thoughts per day, and maybe about 90% are negative and 5% positive and 5% neutral. So the idea is, if we can learn to understand our thoughts and not obey them, especially when they're bad, we need to learn this how to change them. We have some techniques we use to change them. And once you change those thoughts, you're going to change your life, because your thoughts can reflect your attitude, which is a way of thinking and feeling about anything, an attitude. So we all have attitudes on everything, and those are informed by our thinking. And quickly, one person said to me when I was in training a good while back, she said, "Be careful what you say to yourself, because you are always listening." So if you want to unlock your mind, you got
Yes.
to start understanding your thoughts and changing them.
And with the majority being so negative, you listen to that negativity, it translates into your behavior then.
Yeah, it translates your feelings first. But it doesn't have to be that linear. It can go anyway. Yeah, but the outcome is
Hmm.
behavior. Yeah.
Correct. 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 In another forum, you referenced adopting the mind of Christ as the gold standard for operating in our gifting. How can we thrive in the marketplace, and what mindset is needed? Can you just expand
Yes.
a little on that?
Okay, so this one, um, with part of the question that wasn't answered in terms of the environment, if it's
Environment,
okay with
yes.
you, and the assessment,
Yeah.
this is going to link in nicely, because
Correct.
the mind of Christ in, I think it's Philippians 2:5. I always get that scripture wrong every time, but what the Bible is saying is, look, and this is where the world sometimes don't get it right. Look at it this way: in the world, secularly, the world says, look out for yourself and don't bother with anybody else. You make sure you're okay. Number one, self preservation, the first law in nature. Yeah?
Yes.
In the scripture, Jesus doesn't say that. He says the opposite. And I'll give you the rationale. So, Jesus says the commandment is, and this law of Christ now, which shows the mind of Christ, is that we need to love God first, and then we need to love our neighbors as ourselves. So he's
Mm-hmm.
saying to you, look, the way to get what you want is
Mm-hmm.
through people, or being nice, or being considerate of the other person. So the environment that we're talking about, if I see you operating in an environment of selfishness, I
Mm-hmm.
already know, or I can perceive what your mindset or mentality is. So,
Mm-hmm.
this mind of Christ simply means not looking to you yourself, it's looking to your neighbor. He is saying, if you love your neighbor, you are actually going to
Mm-hmm.
edify yourself and love yourself. And the benefits of a corporate or a global understanding and treating each other well
Mm-hmm.
translates into a personal wellness and satisfaction. So when the world
Mm-hmm.
says, look at yourself, sure, you're in the, when you do that, you end up worse off because you're alone
Mm-hmm.
when things happen. But when
Correct.
you pass your bread on many waters, when you look to other people, you have a community to look after you. So if you want
Mm-hmm.
wellness for yourself, concentrate on other people quickly in marketing. Think about all the fast food chains and all the things that people do.
Mm-hmm.
They cater for people. And the more they cater for people, is the more they will benefit. So if you think about a fast food chain that sells, say, chicken, for instance, that person doesn't eat all that chicken for themselves. They prepare it for other people and they sell it.
Other
The
people.
more they
Mm-hmm.
sell, is the more they get. See? So the whole thing in quickly is look, you look at other people, consider other people, and you will be taken care of. Where the world says it opposite, I will concentrate on myself and everybody else is left, and you end up worse off.
Mm. So then, when we consider that kind of behavior being transmitted in society, what you're saying, using the gold standard, the mind of Christ, looking out for others, in effect, helps us reconnect with a bigger community.
Yeah, and it helps you personally. So if you want to be selfish, quote and unquote, look after somebody else, and you'll get the benefit.
Got you. Got you. Just a few days ago, and I'm just sticking this here. A few days ago, the Surgeon General in the United States listed loneliness as being a major issue, and even at the crisis level in the United States. And hearing you talk about that, it reminded me of that, just maybe like 2 days ago, that was stated, how critical it is, and it could even affect us, our political system, every system that we have established. Loneliness can affect that, and you're speaking into that whole selfish, it's just about me, when it's, you need community, we all do need community. We have heard you speak of the mind as a battleground, and we're delving deeper into understanding how we think and how those thoughts can affect us. Can you elaborate on the practice of psychotherapy and the value to developing nations like Guyana? You can also share on how we can remove the associated stigma of therapy in our community.
Thank you. Right. So the value of psychotherapy to nations, not just Guyana or emerging in Guyana, as Guyana is at the moment, but generally. And this is quite crucial because nobody seems to take time to understand why they do or say the things they do. They just know that it's informed from a selfish standpoint. So, what psychotherapy does is get a person, and by the way, this is going to help with the stigma bit also. Psychotherapy is not for mad people. Mad people cannot access psychotherapy.
Correct.
If you're mad, you've lost your mind. How are you going to use that mind to help you? So, psychotherapy is for people who want to be able to master themselves and recognize that the mind as the battleground. Everything starts in the mind. Let me give you an example.
Hmm.
You and I might be good friends, Alicia, and then one day you pass me without saying
Hmm.
anything.
Hmm.
What is going to inform me about this situation? It's my mind and my thoughts.
Hmm.
So now,
Correct.
if I was negative, I am going to see the worst things about this. And by the way, your mind seems to convince you. You don't. Most people don't go against their minds, and the mind seems to be not discriminate. The mind will say to you, "Do something bad," or to yourself and
Hmm.
all, and you will argue. You wouldn't argue with it. You'll just the mind will agree with you if you said it.
Correct.
And if the next minute you said no, I will do something good, the mind wouldn't argue. It'll say, yeah, yeah, do that too.
Correct.
So, so the idea is the battleground. Everything starts in the mind. Even Jesus said
Mind.
it. Yeah, if you think it, you've done it. Because
Hmm.
again, all the things that are created around you started in the mind. This computer
True.
that we are using, it started in the mind. So how do you know what is that reality or not? So when we think about the mind as the battleground, you can have the perfect body. If you don't have a mind, it is not going to be of much use to you. So
Mm-hmm.
the battleground definitely is the mind. And psychotherapy as a whole is trying to teach people that the situations they're in, especially when it comes to understanding that cognitive model or way we think, is this
Mm-hmm.
is not the issue. And excuse me, I can quote, say, look at Nelson Mandela. He was in a particular situation,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't let that affect him to the degree that he wouldn't function normally. So he's maybe one of the only people I know who was in prison, didn't campaign, came out to be president. So this is just trying to show you.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So
Indeed.
everything starts with our thinking. If I think that you
Yes.
passed and you deliberately did that, and I'm convinced, we will lose a great friendship. But if I said,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, maybe she had a bad day, maybe she didn't see me, and you might be just concentrating on WhatsApp or
Mm-hmm.
something
Correct.
important. Yeah. So the idea is we need to start understanding why we think the things we think before we try to understand anybody else. Our
Got you.
mind is
Yes,
where the war is taking place.
definitely.
And
So we
just
have a
remind me the last bit
question.
of it.
Yeah, okay. I will. Let me just get that. And the last bit was the stigma, removing the stigma and the practice of psychotherapy and the value to developing nations like Guyana.
The value is that once people in nations like Guyana understand themselves, they'll be able
Mm-hmm.
to have more clarity in the direction that the nation should go. If again you
Yeah.
have that mind of Christ and you consider each other, we won't have a racial problem because we will each esteem each other higher than the other one.
Higher than. Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so there won't be
Yes.
a problem with this. And the other thing about the stigma, a lot of people don't realize that there are statistics that say, especially in England, 1 in 4 people would have had a mental health crisis or suffered from depression. And if you consider we have about 80 million people, work, do the
Mm-hmm.
maths. That maths will maths. So you understand? So the idea
Correct.
is stigma is only created by society based on people wanting to distance themselves from something that is undesirable. But most of us in our lifetime, if we look at the true definition of when we didn't think for ourselves, when we decided to go against our own mind and our judgment, we have
Mm-hmm.
actually uh, practiced some insanity at some time. So a
True. True.
person's
True.
mind,
Mm-hmm.
if you love one another with the mind of Christ, you can't stigmatize people because Jesus
No.
dealt with that with the woman of the well. Well, she was stigmatized
Mm-hmm.
not for mental health, but for her behavior and what she represented
Behavior.
in society. And he said, throw
Mm-hmm.
the who he's without sin, throw the first stone, cast the first stone. So we need to start thinking it can happen to anybody. So do not
Mm-hmm.
go stigmatizing people. Society can we can get rid of that stigma if we practice the mind of Christ and love people irrespective of what they're going through. Because one day you may go through it too.
Well, you see, that is something that you find in society and even developing countries where we think that the world revolves around us. There is this new trust that the world revolves around us, and so you don't think that, oh, this may come back to me. But I want to pivot to one of the questions from the audience, and this question says, too often, the new dispensation of cognitive offloading comes into conflict with traditional methods of teaching. How can we re equip the middle to seniors who have established themselves in the tradition of overloading the mind or brain with too much information and lean towards strategic thinking instead?
That's an excellent question.
It is.
Right. Teaching is mostly concerned with being didactic, which means it's telling you or you need to absorb information. And this is a very
Mm-hmm.
short, simple fix. Therapy is more accommodating. Therapy is definitely collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do when we teach or when we do therapy is we use what we call Socratic questioning, which is a way which is rooted in the philosopher Socrates,
Mm-hmm.
who asks questions in a certain way that the person that is being asked will be able to come to conclusions for themselves, which is what we call guided discovery. So I can ask you questions in such a way that you will bring the answers out from yourself, for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. So I think if we look at it this way, we'll have better learning instead of being told things. We will
Mm-hmm.
learn things for ourselves. And then that is not overloading now because that brings personal gratification. But if you have to just
Mm-hmm.
learn things to output things, that's why you'll find
Mm-hmm.
people very educated and knowledgeable, but they're still selfish because
Correct.
this is just basically information gathering and storing and outputting for an examination. Change hasn't
Mm-hmm.
happened internally. You see, this is what I believe in this. So it's easy to gain a degree on, well, not easy, but or a master's or a PhD. But what's it doing for you? What's it serving? So the
Mm-hmm.
traditional way of doing things is saying again, selfishness. You get and you are on top. Jesus said, if you are on top, you serve. So the people who want to be great in the kingdom of God, you need to
Must
serve.
serve.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I
Mm.
hope that answered the
So
question.
I hope so. We'll get some more comments. So there is another question from the audience. It says, you recently spoke about a disturbing trend you noticed on the roadways in Guyana as it relates to use and abuse. Can you speak to the mindset of these road users and list some practical solutions that could help in behavior modification?
Right. This is another excellent question. You've got some fantastic people in this audience. Yeah. Honestly,
Yeah.
great questions. Right. So when I've experienced this firsthand. I haven't been back home for a long time. And when I've come home, I've noticed this thing immediately. I didn't only notice that, I noticed how people are treating each other and men treating women and
Mm-hmm.
society as a whole. And that brought me to think that it's a mindset problem because the way people operate in the environment is actually displaying what's happening
In
internally
their mind.
in their
Mm-hmm.
minds. So
Correct.
again, it comes back to the mind of Christ, where these people are not considering anybody but themselves, not realizing that it's the other way around if they want to receive a lot for themselves. They need to
Correct.
consider other people. So
Mm-hmm.
changing that mindset has to do with getting people to understand that this way of thinking, and you can't blame people for doing this, because when people are this, how do I put it, when people don't have much, or when they can't see a bright future and bogged down with bills and all of that, of course people are going to be concerned with sorting themselves out. But what they
Mm-hmm.
still don't understand is that you can achieve what you want to achieve if you could just give a little consideration to other people. And so this mindset of not considering each other has to be seen as wrong, has to be practiced by senior people and modified through various programs. We have subliminal messaging and nudging, where there are things that you, for example, you don't actually directly say, but whatever action is perpetuated or demonstrated, it's given that message below or beneath it. So, for example, I think some practical things that could be done is we can have a national program which actually stipulates this. It could be short and catchy, like say, before you do, or if you want to achieve, think of the other person. So if people realize that, look, if I could get what I want by just
Mm-hmm.
being kind and it will benefit me
Mm-hmm.
more, they will go for
Mm-hmm.
that. The other thing you could do on the roads is maybe I heard that, and so this is not original. I heard they were considering um, putting cameras on the road, like in America, in England,
Yes.
where
Yes.
you have sensors on the roads. If you go over a certain speed limit, you get a fine. The photograph is there, evidence is there, you prosecute, you lose 3 points in your license. If you lose
Correct.
9 points, you get 9 points on your license, you are more likely going to lose that license, the ability to drive. The knock-on effect also consequences are you're going to have a difficult time getting insurance. If you can't get
Correct.
insurance, get it cheaply, you're in a problem because
Yeah.
you have great distances to travel. So the car is
Mm-hmm.
essential. The other thing is they can put, I was thinking about this, you can have undercover cops or police in vehicles in the traffic, and they will see firsthand what's going on, and then you can video or and you capture these people and you make a show that this is not acceptable. There must be consequences. It's no point making a law um, and then passing a law and not being able to enforce it. The only reason
Enforcement
why
is
people in
critical.
other
Yes.
places probably uh, follow the rules of the law is because it's enforced and the consequences are so dire that
Correct.
even if you want to
Correct.
be wicked, your common sense will kick in.
Correct. Definitely. Definitely. Um, um, and I trust that the one person who asked the question, that response was answered your question. In conclusion, let us embrace the wisdom shared today. Mindful living. Incorporate mindfulness into your daily routines. Pause, breathe, and savor the moment. Exercise your brain. Keep challenging yourself with new experiences and learning opportunities. Your mind thrives on it. Social connections. Nurture meaningful relationships. Human connection is the cornerstone of our emotional well being. And let us embark on our individual path towards mental balance, knowing that the pursuit of cognitive wellness is a lifelong endeavor. May your minds flourish, your hearts find peace, and your lives be filled with purpose and joy. Thank you for joining us, and join us again on October 22nd for the second installment of Cognitive Wellness, a path to mental balance. I'm Celicia reminding you to always be kind.